There we go once again. The sounder says, hey, please pay attention. Please pay attention. My name is Stan Houston, and I like to come to you every work day as I can. However, this particular week, on Saturday, we'll have a special program. A gentleman will tell you about being there right in the middle of the Cuban Missile Crisis, which just about came within, as he says, 48 hours of putting an end to humanity as we probably know it today. And obviously, we're still kind of thinking about that as the world situation is not too good. The war continues to be a source not only of economic distraction, but of chaos and anarchy, and unfortunately many people dying, and the threat that that war could become something even much worse. At the same time, the economic inflation news in the United States was not good, and so what is true is there are people who are increasingly afraid, and that's natural. Happens all the time. And yesterday I told you that I had just discovered that it was Face Your Fears Day. Face Your Fears Day. And that encouraged me to go back to a book that I wrote for entrepreneurs about 20 years ago. And I thought maybe I'll pick out that chapter once again. And then I went to a luncheon for a Rotary meeting. They invited me to see if perhaps I could join. And the young man sitting next to me was very much in the same business where I did a lot of my coaching as a financial advisor. And with the economic situation, I could just simply tell that he was afraid. You know, he's got responsibilities, and he doesn't know what the market's going to be like. It doesn't know what that's going to do to his income and what that's going to do to his family. And I could just sense the fear in him. I tried to help him as best I could, but he was afraid. And so, with your permission, I'd like to see if I could be a little bit helpful in talking about what I thought was the first chapter in my book on how to market yourself. And we're going to redo that, only we're going to call it, instead of You Make the Difference, which is true, because before people will buy your product, your service, they have to buy you. So the difference is you. But now we're going to be talking about it's not just how you market, it's everything you do. And the new program that's coming out will be called The Marketing Life. And I like to believe that it could help all of us as we move into these difficult times get good, maybe get really good at selling and marketing ourselves. So if you'd like to know more about, maybe you'd like to participate in that program called The Marketing Life, just reach out to me, of course, stanhouston@gmail.com. But the program for today is actually from the book that I wrote many years ago. And it's chapter 1, and it's Fear Kills Everything. And the program begins right now. Well, here we go. Chapter 1, Fear Kills Everything. And then I included some old quotes that I had found. And from Orison Swett Marsden, who was a very influential, at the turn of the century, kind of the motivational speaker of the time. He said, remember that whatever you dread, fear, you are attracting. Because the mind always relates with whatever dominates the thought. That which we think about most, we get. And it is the easiest thing in the world to kill the possibility of realizing our ambitions and drawing us to the things we fear by continually holding it in mind, by allowing doubt, thoughts, anxious, discouraged thoughts to get possession of us and struggle our efficiency. Remember, whatever you dread, fear you attract. Brian Tracy said the history of the human race is the history of ordinary people who have overcome their fears and accomplished extraordinary things. St. Paul said, we do not have the spirit of fear, but of power, but of love, and of self-confidence. With that in mind, let me continue my story. It was a family reunion to honor an aunt and uncle who were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. Their children and grandchildren were there, along with a host of other friends and relatives. Well, while we were eating the hors d'oeuvres around the punch bowl, the conversation turned to what was new in our lives since we had last been together. One of the guests stopped the conversation by announcing that he had left his company and was starting a new business venture on his own. This drew attention because most of the listeners knew that he had a very good job as a sales representative for a major company. He was good at his work, had a top-notch income, and a lifestyle to match. We wondered how he could just leave that income and security. He then explained the new venture he had in mind and showed some real enthusiasm for the steps he was taking for the new business. Well, the growing audience expressed their admiration, but also expressed the fear that they would feel if they were taking such a risk. After a long pause, the new venturist said, "Don't you know? You can't go down that way of thinking. Don't you know that fear kills everything?" Fear kills everything. Indeed, it does. Fear kills hopes, aspirations, and dreams. It kills relationships, confidence, and creativity. It can kill our joy and rob us of happiness. It can even ruin our health and take our life. Scared to death is not just a figure of speech. For some people, it is a reality. Well, my punch bowl philosopher friend had revealed a great truth. Don't you know, fear kills everything. So if you want to have a successful business, if you want to have a successful career, you must deal with the cold grip of fear. Now, you may have bought this book hoping that you can market yourself and your business, your practice better and make more money and then not have to be so afraid. Some of you have picked up this book as a final attempt to finally make your business work. You are hoping that you might find a formula to rapidly increase your business success, increase your income, and perhaps diminish your fears. Well, most of you do not feel that desperate, but you may feel a little bit inept when it comes to marketing and selling yourself. You may be good, well-informed, and with all the right information, the latest technology, but that's not enough today. This leads back to the subject of fear and a fundamental truth. Marketing and selling your services, your wisdom, and your professional expertise has many challenges. But the first and continuing challenge to marketing yourself and building your entrepreneurial business and practice begins with overcoming your fears. The less fear you have, the more successful you will be. The less fear you have, the more successful you will be. Now, personal performance marketing begins by understanding the fears that will steal your confidence and creativity, and knowing how to overcome them, how to face your fears. Now, here's where I stopped, but then I went on to this point, and this is true of my life. I've done a lot of work and thinking and praying with people about this, but this is the truth that I can reasonably share with you. There are basically 5 fears that can stifle your success, particularly in building a business and taking the risks. One of the great questions we ask is, what would you do if you knew you would not fail? If you were not afraid of failing, if you knew that you wouldn't fail, what would you do? What would you do differently if you knew you couldn't fail? Well, guess what the first fear is? The very first fear. The fear of failure and poverty. That's right. The fear of failure and poverty. Now, there are 5 of them, but I'm just today going to go through the first one, and we'll talk a little bit about it. The most profound fear that you will face as an entrepreneur in marketing and building your practice is the fear of going broke. Poverty is frightening. One client told me about once seeing a large cardboard box and how that image stayed with him because in that box he was frightened. That very box that he saw frightened him in the early days of his venture. He had visions of himself as homeless and living in such a box. It was intensely visual and very gripping to him. In fact, he said he had to pull over and stop the car. He was shaking so badly when he saw that big box and thought he would be homeless. The fear of losing your livelihood, of not being able to pay the rent, buy food, can be as intense as the fear of losing your life. The fear of poverty is primal. It is a deep part of the human situation. Don't feel ashamed or inferior because others can handle this fear better than you can. People handle this deep fear differently based on their personality, their temperament, their experience and faith. Many motivational speakers have stories people who felt this fear and just went out and made it happen. They tell how these brave people overcame their fear and became successful. And there are many stories like that. But the other part of the stories are not so bright. There are true stories of many others who were overcome by panic, gave in to depression, and failed in their attempt to market themselves and build their business. These equally true stories are usually not included in those "you can do it" speeches. The good feelings and courage that come from the Friday motivational speech soon fade in the hard and fast reality of a Monday morning full of rejection and anxious anticipation. Every person must devise their own strategy for creatively dealing with their fear of failure and poverty. But if the fear of failure and poverty is profound in your life, you will find marketing yourself and selling yourself very difficult. A successful marketing strategy takes time, creativity, and a sense of self-confidence. When you're afraid that you're going to lose it all, it is very hard to take the time necessary to do well and be patient for the results. Your heightened anxiety may lead you to action, but it is often desperate action and not creative marketing activity. The fear of failure and poverty might motivate you to go out and sell something, a policy, an annuity, a product. Try and sell anything. But that's not marketing. People who are seeking professional help with their financial situation or are seeking a product are not attracted to people who seem desperate for business. So the more desperate you are to make your business work or to sell your product, or in the case of many of them trying to sell an insurance policy, they don't like you because you're desperate, and the fear makes you desperate. Here's what I recommend. If that's the case, take a time out. Take a time out. And do what I oftentimes call a slide. You pull back. Perhaps you find a second part-time income. In fact, I have all kinds of stories of people who started their business and found that it wasn't going. So what they did is they found ways to arrange what I call a slide hustle. And so that there are ways of making some supplementary income. And there are many, many stories and many strategies of how you, if you are afraid. And there are 5 other fears, and we can talk about them. Fear of public speaking. A lot of that's the fear of failure and rejection. All 5 of the fears relate to one another, and they all build upon and reinforce one another. If you'd like to know more about those 5 fears, we'll put together a program for you on them, but the first one is to realize fear does kill everything. And you have to devise a strategy for not just facing your fears, but dealing with them in creative ways, ways you may never have thought of. And of course, my role as a coach was oftentimes to suggest, okay, while you're doing this, you're also doing this. This is something that might work better for you. This is a way where you won't feel or look so desperate. So that was a part of how to remember that indeed fear kills everything. But you don't have to be afraid. And here's the thing that I simply want to encourage you with. Thankful, grateful people, even in the midst of a mess. A thankful and grateful spirit. Even in the difficult times. Give thanks with a grateful heart. A thankful and grateful heart is seldom a fearful heart. A thankful and grateful heart is seldom a fearful heart. Please let that sit on your head just for a while. I'm Stan Houston. These are hopefully some interesting and helpful ideas on facing your fears and not being afraid. Perhaps to fear less and maybe even someday be fearless. I'll be back. If this is a little bit where you're at, by the way, we're going to be continuing to do a lot more radio and podcast programs about how to deal with your fears, but it's something that I have great experience in because I've been afraid a lot, and I still get afraid. There's no security in my life. There's all kinds of things that can make me anxious. No one is guaranteeing me a paycheck, or that I'll have any of the money that I need or want. I have no security of that way. But there are things we can do and things we can learn to do. And by the way, no matter even if times are good right now, perhaps it's good to know. If I lost my good situation, what would I do? What would be my strategy? What would be my plan? And we can help you perhaps plan and think about that. As we go into these difficult times, be ready to be brave and bold and self-confident, and see if you can, as you look at the fearful things, face them, deal with them, maybe even overcome them, and maybe even be better off because of them. Reach out to me at stanhouston@gmail.com, stanhouston@gmail.com. All the best and blessings to you. And don't fret. Don't be afraid. Bye for now.